what they've been able to do with combat medicine since the history of this hospital. I think the hospital was built in the 50s at some time. Guys like Matt Smith, my friend, can now run in 10Ks because of the advances that have been made, where my grandfather, who lost his leg in, I think, around 1950 in a coal mine accident, would have never dreamed of doing such a thing. For Iraq and Afghanistan, Landstuhl Hospital has seen over 20,000 wounded veterans come through there. One of the head surgeons there for amputees said the number one thing that he thinks has helped them to increase recovery rates and to lift the spirits of soldiers is a project called the Fisher House, where families can stay and help with recuperation. This doctor believes that despite all the technology, the number one thing that helps get soldiers behind is to get their families and their friends by their side as quickly as possible. Perhaps in the future, we as a church or as a community can think of ways to help create funds for that to happen more quickly, or as quickly as possible, as travel expenses to Germany and Mulman are not really easy to come by. Walter Reed Hospital has the same thing, and even at Walter Reed Hospital, one of the other biggest advancements, despite all the technology, is that there are Vietnam veterans who show up, who are amputees, and visit with the amputees of this war. And they speak to them about experiences that only they can know about and share with them. I didn't know that happened, and I honestly cried a little bit watching that last night as men would show each other their legs, and I can remember sitting at my grandfather's leg as a little kid and banging on it. There's some sort of weird humor to that, and you get used to it, and they were leading them down that path to understand that life was going to go on and be good, as a matter of fact. I've talked a lot about this current war we're in, but it's nothing new. It's not just this war, and there are many veterans out there who are still feeling the burdens of their service, whether in peacetime or in combat, over many years. Last night there was a story on a Vietnam veteran who was Marine Bobby Barrera. Bobby was actually riding in an armored vehicle. And those of you who like any kind of military history would have known about a man named Carlos Hathcock. He's, at the time, was the most successful sniper in American history. He was a bit of a legend in the Marine Corps, for sure. There's rifle ranges named after him all over the country. Carlos was in the vehicle with them, actually. And a bomb similar to our modern-day IED went off, and Bobby was burned over most of his body. And if you've ever dealt with severe burn injuries, it's probably the worst thing that can happen to a person. I knew a man in Virginia who was basically a lumber guy, and a generator went off, so I experienced some of that with his family. It blew up, and he was burned severely. And it's just a horrible experience. Every day, for months and months and months, Bobby would be laid into a bathtub and have to be scrubbed. And I don't mean burns like sunburn. I mean burns like black skin that has to be cleaned to prevent infection every day. Not washed, but scrubbed. And in the burn ward at that time at Walter Reed, you could hear the screams up and down the hallway every morning as guys were scrubbed. Bobby hit a point. Well, he actually ended up losing his hand and then his other arm, and I believe part of his leg, to infection, that they just had to take it away because they couldn't keep up with it fast enough. Bobby's dad was a law enforcement officer and came to visit him one day, and he asked his dad if he had his gun on him. And he said, "Yeah, I always do." And Bobby looked at his dad and he said, "I don't want to go on. I need you to end this for me right now." Again, this is something that a Vietnam-era veteran experienced, and I'm certain every war we've ever been in has had veterans who experience the same thing thousands of times over. He couldn't take the pain anymore, to the point that he asked his dad to end his life. His dad and him prayed together. Bobby's almost 70 years old now, been happily married for a long time, and is doing well, but what today is about is a little different. It's not about the ceremonies and the parades, as as I mentioned. It's about acknowledging that there is healing that has to take place. And the first step in that healing is the acknowledgement that it exists. It's not fair for us as a country to glorify everything without acknowledging the wounds that occur to our souls in times of war. It is right to honor people. It is right to defend our country. It is right to protect the innocent. But it is wrong to do so in a way that doesn't realize that those we send off to do things, to save lives in burning buildings, to respond to car accidents, to go into homes with domestic violence as police, it's not right to ignore what they might experience and need help dealing with. You see, the things they hear, they see, they don't just see like we do on TV. Certain things, they have sounds to them that you never forget. They have a smell to them. Death has a smell. If you've ever smelled things that come back and remind you of a time and a place, you know what I'm talking about, how powerful our mind can be with that. Oftentimes the smell will hit me in the fall time that takes me right back to military school in Vermont. They also have a taste and even a feel to them. Things that we can't relate to by watching it on TV, but only those who have experienced it know. And it's hard to experience that. Especially the volunteers, the pressure they are under to maintain their whole lives, or their own lives, their household, their family, coaching a sports team, being a scout leader, both of you, helping at the school and doing all sorts of things, but yet to maintain the level of proficiency in what they do so that they can be of assistance to us when we need it. And they do so in such a servitude that only reminds me of Christ. To give up your life, whether it's just time in your life or money or part of your soul, it's still a sacrifice, just like Christ made for those he did not know. Several years ago, I read a story about a firefighter who died rescuing a dog. He knew he was only going back into the building for a dog, and I'm not even sure where it was, to be honest, and of course he was encouraged not to go, but he did. And he died and he left behind a family of 5 children. I won't lie to you, there was a part of me that when I read that article thought, what a dummy. I was mad at the guy because he left his family of 5 behind to rescue a dog. I was wrong for feeling that because he did what he was built to do. I felt for the kids and the wife and his parents, as we all should, and be there for them, but yet he couldn't not be a firefighter in that moment. I still think he made the wrong choice, but I also know that never in his mind did he think he wouldn't come out alive with the dog. These things that we experience affect each of us differently. Some people can take more than others. That's just the way we're built. I could never ever imagine taking what Jesus did or what the disciples experienced as they began the early church. Being imprisoned and tortured and chastised and stoned and all sorts of things that people throughout church history have gone through in the name of faith. That's who I kind of relate to in my calling in life. I can't imagine seeing things that people have to see in order to help others. But I'm so glad that they are there to do that. I do know this, though, that a separation comes, which they don't want or don't expect. And oftentimes, not everybody, but many will feel as though they're separate from God. You may know veterans that can't walk inside a church again. We all know someone who's lost a loved one and doesn't go back to church after that. It's a normal thing in a process. And I believe that the church needs to do a better job about reaching out to those people, not just to get them inside here, but to bring the church to wherever they are. The stories today in the gospel are important because of this. No matter what you've been through, no matter what you've done, no matter what people have done to you or what you see, God is always searching for you. In fact, God has already found you and is there beside you all the time. It may not feel like that, but God is there just waiting for you to return. And when you return, I promise you, whether you know it or not, but I believe that you experience this deep down inside, some more openly than others, you know that God celebrates your return. You can never, ever be separate from God. Nothing under the sun separates you from the love of the very being that created you and all things. No matter who you are, no matter what you do or where you've served or how you will serve, if you leave with one thing, I want you to know that. And I know that as much as I know anything else in my life. That even the shooting of a little girl does not separate you from the love of God. I ask today that we think of those people who honor us and their God, whatever their God may be, or whoever their God may be, by protecting human life, by standing in harm's way, by risking their time and their talents or their treasure in order to help us and to provide protection, whether it be in the fire service or in law enforcement, in EMS, and of course, most definitely with our veterans. I ask that you keep them in prayer throughout today and throughout your lives, and that you remember that as we honor them, we have to also remember that there is healing that has to occur as well. And simply by reminding them that God loves them as well could be the very thing to let them know that. Amen.